Hi everyone, Stepan here. Today I'm going to show you my anti-French repertoire, which I've been using for 8 years. I have an excellent score with it, and I think it's a great balance between counterplay for white and easy positions for white. Usually if you choose the exchange French, then it's, boring most of the time. If you choose knight c3, then it's very, very complex tactical, but this is just the right balance. So we're basing the repertoire on the Tarrasch for white. So against e6, against the French, we go d4. Now, black doesn't have to go d5. I'm going to show you a couple of deviations black could go for early on, and we're going to cover everything, but usually they do. The best way to learn an opening or an opening repertoire is to play it out against another human until you develop a skill and get experience in the opening. In the absence of a crazy human who's willing to play the French against you over and over again, you can use Nd2 to substitute for them. So Nd2 is a human-like AI. You can play against it. It's going to play like a human, try to trick you like a human. It's going to defend and attack like a human. And whether it's winning or losing, it's not going to feel like playing the engine. So follow the link in the description. You will gain access to the anti-French repertoire I have prepared. And you can just select to play a game in the opening. Select Nd2's difficulty, let's say Rook 2. I want to play a blitz game as white. Let's play e4. Let's see the anti-French repertoire. Nd2 is going to be giving you immediate feedback. Let's see what it chooses. Oh, it plays b6. Come on. Okay, I don't want to spoil this. You're going to see what's going to happen in the video, but basically, it's like having a human you can play chess against. Follow the link in the description. If you do decide to go premium on Nd2, use the code Hanging Pawns to get a massive 64% discount. The entire anti-French repertoire you're about to see in the video is available on my Patreon page, so follow the link in the description if you would like to get it. You can purchase it separately, but you can also subscribe to Patreon, help support the channel, and gain access to all of these repertoires: 1e4, 1d4, the Spanish, the Italian, the London system, the Caro-Kann, the King's Gambit, the Sicilian, and many, many more, as well as 500 other posts for just $3 US a month. So if you'd like to support the channel, follow the link in the description. Now let's go back to the anti-French. So black plays d5, and our repertoire is knight d2. Now, this is called Tarrasch, and the reason we play knight d2 is very simple. In most cases, black is going to try to attack the d4 square and the d4 pawn. And in most French structures, of course, black plays c5 to liberate their position and to put pressure on d4. So why choose knight d2? Well, it's very, very simple. With knight d2, we have two extra possible defenders of the d4 pawn. Firstly, we have the option to go c3, reinforcing the pawn because, we don't have a knight on c3. And secondly, we can reinforce d4 with both knights. Firstly, this knight could go to e2. The knight from d2 could come out to f3. And that way, we have many, many, many defenders on the d4 square, on the d4 pawn, compared to the normal lines. Now, black has many options here. The first two options we're going to have a look at are the closed and the open Tarrasch, and those are by far the most common variations you're going to be facing. The closed Tarrasch is knight f6, where we play e5 and the knight gets chased away to d7, although knight e4 has been played against me in one tournament game. I'm going to show you a simple way to gain a big advantage against that. And of course, after knight d2, the open Tarrasch is c5. Now, c5 positions are going to be very different to knight f6 positions, completely different story, and those are very likely going to be IQP positions where after ed5, black has the option to take with the queen or with the pawn. If they take with the pawn, let's say, we are usually going to be playing against the isolated queen's pawn on d5, and again, those are going to be complex, but very, very different to the closed positions. And coming back to knight d2, black also has additional options. Black can play bishop to e7. Bishop e7 is the Morozevich variation. Now, usually, I'll try to explain the strategy instead of a bunch of theoretical lines, and this video is going to be about understanding how to play against the French. You can look at all the lines yourself in the repertoire available below. But the idea behind bishop e7 is slightly odd to me, because in the French, black strives to play the move e5 to liberate the bad French bishop. So many Morozevich lines I think are going to be more favorable for white than the main lines. Then we have other options. We have the Guimard Defense, which is knight c6. I don't think that's a problem. We have many variations in which the e-pawn is taken and black either plays knight f6 or knight d7 or bishop d7. This is what I like, playing bishop to d7, and after knight f3, bishop c6, the fourth Knox. So there are many different ways for black to play, which is why I think this video is, this entire repertoire should be fairly complex to understand. Playing against the French in itself is a huge job, and if you play e4, you need to have a repertoire like this against every defense for black, so that's what I'm going to be doing in the future. Before we get into normal lines in the Tarrasch, let's see how black can avoid the Tarrasch or the Tarrasch variation. So one way is the Sicilian. So they can play c5. And now, of course, if we play knight f3, we are transposing to all the Khan, Taimanov stuff, e6 Sicilians. So my advice would be, if you're an open Sicilian player who plays knight f3 and against e6 you don't play the Kramnik or any other deviation from the main lines, then by all means play knight f3 and go into the normal e6 Sicilian. But here I'm going to recommend the deviation, because I personally dislike playing the open Sicilian against e6, and I'm going to go for the Kramnik variation most of the time. So we aren't going to go knight f3, we're going to go d5, and this is going to be a French Benoni. So after ED, notice that our pawn isn't on c4 yet. So we are going to go into a Benoni where we don't have a pawn on c4. And black is going to go d6. We're going to go knight f3. Black is going to go knight f6. And we're going to go bishop e2. Now, black doesn't have time to enter a normal Benoni position with g6. Why? Because we have bishop b5. So if g6 castles, bishop g7, we now have the move bishop b5, and it's really not easy to defend against this. If knight d7, we go rook e1, of course, and if bishop to d7, we go rook e1, and once again, the king must move away. So this isn't good. So black is going to be forced to play a Benoni. Firstly, maybe they don't know how to play the Benoni. Secondly, it's going to be a Benoni without the bishop on g7, which is a huge downside for black. So they have to go bishop e7, castles, c4, something like bishop f5, bishop d3, takes. This is a position we want, and it's, fairly standard Benoni stuff. But again, there's no dangerous bishop on the g7 square, so I think this is a good improvement. Another line we have to briefly look at is b6, if they try to avoid the Tarrasch. Now this really isn't a problem. I don't even think it has a name. In any case, we're going to go bishop d3, and strategically we want to go bishop d3 first in all variations before we play knight e2. Remember, if we're going to play our Tarrasch setup, we want this knight on f3 most of the time. So something like bishop b7. In this case, knight f3 I think is better than knight e2, but still we have kept the option to go knight e2. Knight f3, c5, always play c3, that's why we don't have a knight on c3. Something like knight f6 and queen e2. It's a normal reti in reverse for black. White doesn't have a major advantage or anything, but it's just a normal position where we are a tempo up against the reti. So these are the two deviations that black can play early on. Now, if they do play d5 and we play knight d2, they have the option not to go into the 6 lines, 6 variations, 6 major openings we are going to see in the video. They have 2 relatively annoying options, a6 and h6. And I would treat them both the same way. This is called the modern system, and black is trying to wait and see what white's going to do. So in this case, I like transposing to relatively normal lines with knight f3, and after c5, we don't play c3, we play ed5. And after ed5, we are now in the open Tarrasch, and black has played a6. Now that's not a useless move because it prepares to develop the bishop. Black will have b5 in some cases, but I think this is the best option we have. Against a6, go into the open Tarrasch. Something like bishop e2, c4 is possible, and now we have something similar to the pawn of Caro-Kann, where black is going to try to, use this pawn advance. Castles, bishop d6, and b3 we have to undermine this, takes, a takes, and our plan will of course be to play the move c4, whether now or in a move or two. And I think these are perfectly playable positions. So against a6 we are going to deviate from our Tarrasch setup. h6, and I remember a game I played against Bukal, a Croatian IM. I got completely destroyed because I didn't understand that h6 is actually a useful waiting move. I played bishop d3. Once again, we're going to go knight f3. And when they go knight f6, now we go e5. And after knight fd7, we are now in the closed Tarrasch, as you're going to see relatively normal lines, c5, c3. But the moves knight f3 and h6 have been thrown in. So we don't have knight e2, knight df3. And that's a slight problem for us. But you can also say that h6 is a useless move, and it also provides a hook if we want to go crazy with g4, g5. We aren't. We're going to castle, and black is going to go g5. And this is one of the ideas behind h6, but it's really not that problematic. If you turn on the engine, white should have a significant advantage, and we can play the move dc5. After bishop c5, we can now go knight b3 and set up a very nice blockade on d4, either knight fd4 or knight bd4. I like the move knight fd4. This does not really hang the pawn, because after knight d5, we have the move f4, and we are using this hook on g5 to attack black. Now, this is not the only way to play, but I'm just trying to show you a couple of ideas against h6. So these are the two weird sidelines black could go for against the Tarrasch, and all the interesting sidelines black can play for to avoid the Tarrasch. Now, let's go into the usual stuff. So, let's have a look at the closed Tarrasch first. I'm always happy to play this variation because I don't think black really has enough compensation for what they are doing. That being said, I have lost a game or two in the closed Tarrasch before, but mostly I get very good positions. So we play e5. And Željko Bedić played knight e4 against me, so let's get that out of the way. I was really prepared for this move, and that's the first time I've ever faced it. We are going to take d4 and bishop c4. This is the killer move that gives white an enormous advantage. Black would like to play c5, but it's really not such a great move. After c5, white can go d5, and this pawn cannot be taken. Let's say e d5, queen d5, bishop d5. It's clear that black is about to lose material and have an awful position. If they go a6, which is another option, we can now go a4, and after b6, we go knight h3 and castle. And it's extremely hard for black to hold on to this pawn long term. We also have moves like bishop g5, and my game against Željko Bedić was a really easy win, I'm gonna say. I had a massive advantage on move 10. So knight e4 really isn't a big deal. Just remember to take and go bishop c4. Most people are gonna go knight fd7. And now if you have ever played the Tarrasch, the next few moves are forced. Bishop d3, c5, c3. That's why we don't have a knight on c3. Knight c6 and knight e2, overprotecting d4 in a move or two, because knight f3 is going to be played. And now black has a couple of options. Remember that the two most important things black's going to do is f6 and take on d4. Those two moves are going to happen every time. It just depends on the move order. The most common move order is cd, cd, and f6. In the Tarrasch, we take on f6. It's always correct to take on f6. We take, they play knight f6. And now you can see why the Morozevich is a strange choice. The bishop on e7. Black really wants the bishop on d6, because the way to liberate their position is to play e5. So this is what black's going to be doing. So I'm going to recommend a slight deviation from the mainline theory. Firstly, knight f3, defending d4 and e5. When black plays bishop d6, the most normal move here is to castle. But if we castle, what's black going to do? How does black reinforce the e5 square? Well, black plays queen c7. And when black plays queen c7, we can no longer control e5 sufficiently. So I'm going to recommend a slightly odd move, the second most popular but extremely rare, bishop f4. And now if queen c7 is played, we can simply exchange. Black has lost the tempo. And if it isn't played, if black takes, we play knight f4 and e5 is defended. So let's say castles, castles. Black can now go knight e4, knight g4, or queen d6. Those are all viable options. Our main goal, once again, is to play against e5. And the thing you have to remember in these lines, in the closed Tarrasch, is rook takes f3. If there is one strategic pattern that's dangerous, it's rook takes h3. f3, excuse me. So I'm going to show you one of the most popular lines in which this can happen. So knight e4, knight e2, we have to defend the knight's attacked. And now, as you can see, we have blocked the queen's defense of the knight. So rook takes, pawn takes, and knight g5. Now, white is slightly better here. White's up the exchange, but it's not an easy position to play. I have analyzed this extensively, and my conclusion is that this is the best attempt. f4, knight h3, king h1, queen h4, and queen d2. When they take on f2, we check, we go king g2, and they're going to exchange on d3. Now, this is, a pawn for the exchange. The engine says white has an advantage. It's not easy, and you should, of course, aim to trade off queens, and then it should become easy. This bishop is still bad. Black still needs to liberate the bishop, so they are going to play something like bishop d7 and rook f8, and maybe knight a5, knight c4. So that's what you get when you play bishop to d6. I enjoy these positions a lot when you play, bishop to f4 and bishop d6. So that's one of the main lines. That's something you have to be aware of. Now, if they don't take on d4 straight away, I mean, they don't have to, they have other options. They can play a5. What the most popular second move is queen to b6. And queen b6 just tries to overwhelm d4, and now our d2 knight starts to make sense. We play knight f3, and everything's defended. One thing you have to remember in many lines is that black cannot keep taking like a crazy person, because we can play bishop to b5 check if there's no knight on d7, or if the king has castled, bishop h7 check, a discovered attack on the queen. So that's a tactical way to defend d4 most of the time. In this case, we're fine. So takes, takes. And now usually black plays f6. There's a line with bishop b4 check, which I have faced many times and won, I think, every game. Bishop b4 check, bishop d2, takes, takes, queen b4. We just exchange everything. a3, queen takes d2, king takes d2, and it should be a very pleasant endgame for white. But as I said, most people are going to play cd and then f6. After f6, we take, we always take, takes, takes, and we castle. And now they go bishop d6 again, once again playing for e5. In this case, the queen has already moved. e5 is a very problematic move and it cannot be played yet. So we can simply continue with knight c3. And if they go e5, well, then they lose. e5, bishop e5, knight d5, knight d5, and of course the king is still stuck in the center. That cannot be done. So after knight c3, black is forced to castle. Okay, and now there are many moves white could play for. I prefer the move bishop e3 or bishop g5. In this case, I'm going to recommend bishop e3. Once again, it plays against e5 because, if e5 we can take, and if d4, this isn't a blunder, because if takes, 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 queen takes, then bishop h7. This is the pattern I was talking about. So e5 isn't playable. On bishop e3, we are preventing e5. And you might be wondering, well, isn't the b2 pawn hanging? That's another tactical pattern you have to remember. The queen is actually lost if it takes on b2. And I had a tournament game in the finals of the Croatian Cup last year where I played bishop g5 instead of bishop e3, ended up winning the game. And my opponent thought a long time and didn't take on b2. If you take on b2, then there is knight b5 and the game is over. The knight's hanging and rook b1 is hanging. So let's say they save the bishop. Firstly, if they go queen b4, then rook b1 and you just lose the bishop. If you move the bishop back, which is the best move, then rook b1, queen a2 is forced, rook a1, queen b2, and rook a4. This is the pattern you have to remember. Bishop c1 is coming and the queen is lost. The best way for black to play in this losing position is to grab the knight, or try to grab the knight. Bishop c1, ab, rook takes a8, queen c3 only move, and now bishop takes b5, and black is just losing. The queen is offside. I don't even know what the best move is. I don't know. It's just over. We can take the knight and then take the bishop. If they go bishop d7, we can go queen a4. I don't know. Maybe bishop d6, bishop a3. It's just busted for black. And on bishop e3, if they play something normal, bishop d7, then we can go a3. And this simply prevents queen takes b2. If queen takes b2 here, then knight a4, and once again the queen is lost. In this case, it's actually trapped because the pawn on a3 prevents queen b4. So bishop e3 isn't a tactical problem, it actually is a useful developing move. So let's say bishop d7, which is the best move, a3, let's say black doesn't blunder on b2 but goes bishop e8. Black is now trying to activate the bishop on a different diagonal. So knight g5, targeting the pawn, maybe knight d8, and this is what you're going to get. Black is going to be fighting for e5 and struggling to defend e6, and we are going to have this IQP on d4, and we are going to be putting pressure on the backwards pawn on e6. So this can happen in many, many lines. So the closed Tarrasch is, I think, a favorable opening for white if you know some tactical patterns. It's not about the exact move orders, it's about knowing the tactical patterns that black could fall for. Let's continue with the open Tarrasch. So in this position, the second most common move is c5. And this just introduces a whole different set of positions. We are going to take on d5. Black has two options, take with the pawn or with the queen. Let's look at queen takes first. Against queen takes, we have a very forcing line with which we use the fact that the queen is on d5 to gain a tempo. So we start with knight f3, preventing queen d4. When they take on d4, we play bishop c4. The queen must move away. Queen d6 is the most common retreat square, and now we castle. The pawn cannot be defended. We are going to play knight b3, and if they play e5, this is another thing you have to remember, e5 is just losing, just knight e5. On queen e5, rook e1, so it just doesn't work. So on queen d6 castles, knight f6 is the most common move, knight b3, and once again e5 fails for the same reason. So black plays knight c6, and now we have to take. So takes, always take with the knight, do not trade queens. We have a lead in development, our king is safe, their king isn't safe. And black has many ways to play here, but the most common feature of this position is the d4 square, the e6 weakness, which is going to become very weak if black tries to play something like b6 or a5, a6, b5, bishop b7, we can overwhelm e6. So black needs to castle quickly in most cases. Another thing we have is a 3-2 pawn majority on the queen side, which can be extremely useful. Now, black's most common moves are bishop e7, bishop d7, and a6. Let's play a6 because that's the most common. Now, black usually plays queen c7 at some point, targeting this bishop and gaining a tempo. So I like the idea of retreating the bishop straight away. Queen c7, bishop g5, bishop d6, and h3. And in this position, if black chooses to castle, we can simply go rook e1, and you can see how e6 could be a problem. Let's say bishop f4, trying to exchange bishops, we can just go h4 and start attacking, start undermining. This is a position in which, because the queen side is undeveloped and because there's a target on e6, black needs to be very careful. It's not winning for white or anything, but it's just more comfortable. If they go bishop d7, which is a very normal move, we can go c3, queen c7 and queen e2, once again putting pressure on the weakness on e6, bishop d6. Now in this case we can get away with knight b5 because there is no time to take on h2. Knight b5, bishop b5 check, and king e7 is the line. Once again you can see that it's slightly more comfortable for white. That being said, the open Tarrasch with queen takes d5, in my opinion, is the best chance for black against the Tarrasch. I think this is the optimal way to play. Now, if they play ed5, we are going to be using the e file to start a quick attack. Okay, we go bishop b5 check. First of all, there is knight c6 and bishop d7. If bishop d7, we go queen e2 check, and they go bishop e7, blocking our queen. Now we play dc5. The most common pattern when the bishop moves away to e7 or to d6 is to take that pawn. It's going to be very hard to hold on to the pawn, but it's more about setting up a blockade against the isolated d5 pawn. So knight f6, knight b3, immediately setting up a blockade, castles, knight f3, rook e8, bishop e3, our queen isn't in trouble, a6, bishop d3, bishop a4, trying to win the pawn, knight fd4, knight bd7, castles, we give the pawn back, knight c5, bishop c5 and c3. And in this position, black can choose to trade off the knight because our bishop is pinned, but then we get the bishop pair. If they don't take the knight, then we can move the queen and have a perfect blockade on d4. If black ever takes, we take with the bishop. So we're going to be playing against this IQP. After bishop b5 check, black doesn't have to go for this, black can play knight c6. And I think this is easier to play against. So knight f3, once again, bishop d6. The bishop has moved, we take on c5, and now we castle. Now, if knight f6, black is very close to losing. Black needs to play knight e7, covering the e file. If knight f6, then rook e1 check, bishop e6, the only sensible way to save the position, and now knight b3. Have to move your bishop away, knight bd4, everything is hanging, and black is very, very close to being busted. The engine says plus 0.7, but this is very hard to play. So the open Tarrasch with ed5, I think, is very strategically complex, but it's also a very pleasant position for white. So the two main variations, closed Tarrasch and open Tarrasch, is something I'm very happy to see. In fact, I usually play d4 now, but when I see that my opponent plays the French, I always play e4. Always, as you could see in my tournament games. Okay, let's have a look at the Morozevich. So knight d2, bishop e7, slightly odd, another sort of waiting move. And against waiting moves, so a6, bishop e7, and h6, we don't play bishop d3, we don't play e5, there is no need for that, we don't play anything strange, we play knight f3. So when they don't go knight f6 or c5, we just play knight f3 and go for a very normal position. Knight f6, now we go e5. The knight moves back and we go bishop d3. You can see that black has managed to disrupt our normal Tarrasch position with knight e2 and knight df3. So we don't have enough support over d4. However, black doesn't have enough support of e5 because the bishop has moved already. And if it moves to d6 after f6 and takes, then black will have lost the tempo. So c5, c3, knight c6. There is b6 also. This is a line you have to know. If black tries to get rid of this bishop, this is similar to what happens in the stone wall. We just don't allow that, queen e2. Now black has to play a5 to force that. Now we castle, and after bishop a6, we take and we place the knight. And now we can go knight e1, followed by queen g4. So all of black's pieces are sort of stranded on the queen side, and we can start an attack. But most commonly, black is just going to go knight c6. Okay, we castle. And now here is why black plays this weird bishop e7 move. We have committed our king. We have castled. Now, black can play a5, black can play queen b6, black can play, normal moves, and this is going to resemble a close Tarrasch. But one thing we have to be aware of in the Morozevich is the move g5. And this could be a problem. If you're facing a very experienced player in the Morozevich, they're going to go g5. And I'm going to show you a move. Now, I have never faced this in a tournament game, but I've had something prepared for years. A very, very nice move in this position, very uncommon. Most people take on c5, but we aren't going to do that. We are going to go knight b1. Now, why knight b1? Well, we're putting pressure on g5. It's as simple as that. Now, I don't really know what to suggest. If they go h6, we can just go bishop e3 and continue with queen d2, so h6 really doesn't make too much sense. So they will likely push the pawn to g4. This is what everyone does. And we simply go knight e1. Now, how do you defend this pawn? You can notice that d4 is hanging, but that's really not a big deal. If they play cd4, then we play cd4, and on knight d4, we take on g4. Okay, the knight's hanging, their king is completely naked, the bishop is still bad. So I think this is a great refutation of the Morozevich with g5. After g4, knight e1, the engine says the best move is f5. Now, if you're going to play f5, you have to be cold-blooded, to say the least. ef6, knight f6, and bishop b5, and good luck defending this. The engine says plus 0.7, but I think in human play, this is almost unplayable for black. So the Morozevich isn't a big deal. If they don't play g5 here, if they make a move like queen b6, then there's really nothing to worry about. We can take on c5, knight c5, and bishop c2, and we are going to have excellent chances of an attack against h7. Okay, let us continue with the Blackburn. We are now entering two variations that start with d4. And as you could have seen in my French repertoire video, I recommend that against knight c3 and knight d2, black just exchanges on e4 and plays the Fort Knox with bishop d7, bishop c6. We're going to have a look at that in a second. But let's have a look at the Blackburn first. So d4, knight e4, and knight d7. The idea behind knight d7 is I want to go knight f6, and I want to have a Caro-Kann structure for black, eventually, where I usually will try to play bishop b7. So we're going to go knight f3, they're going to go knight gf6. Now, I have a tournament game in this line where I played bishop g5, I had a good position, ended up losing, but since then I've changed the variation I play, and I'm going to recommend something new. We're going to play something close to the main line. Knight takes f6, knight takes f6, and bishop d3. The most natural developing moves. Now, black can play bishop e7, which is not that ambitious, or they can go c5, which is the best move. We aren't going to go c3, playing for an IQP, although c3 is playable. Bishop e3 is also playable, castles is also playable. We're not hanging the pawn, because if we castle takes, knight takes, queen takes, bishop b5 picks up the queen. But we are going to go dc5 anyway, helping black develop the bishop, because we have a minor but very pleasant advantage. Bishop g5. How does black deal with the bishop on g5, the knight that's coming to e5? They simply have to break the pin. If they don't break the pin, if they play something like queen a5 check, then we can go c3. So most people are going to go h6. We go bishop h4, and once again, they sort of have to unpin with queen a5. c3, and now knight d5. This is what black's going to be doing. However, notice that the diagonal is extremely weak. In this case, we have to watch out for c3, so queen d2, we have to waste the tempo on that. Bishop e7, challenging our bishop. Bishop takes, knight takes, and castles. And we are playing for a 3-2 queenside majority and the b1 h7 diagonal. and we're playing against the bad bishop. So in this case, let's say rook d8, rook fe1, queen c7, rook a1, bishop d7, knight e5. We're going to have a knight on e5, rooks over here, and we're going to have a potential passed pawn on the c file. So this is nothing major. White doesn't have an advantage. It should be very close to equal, but I just think it's pleasant for white to play compared to the deviations from the main line against the Blackburne. Now my favorite. After knight d2, what I recommend for black is the Fort Knox, so takes, knight takes, bishop d7. It may seem like an odd move, but black's just trying to sort out the bad French bishop by playing bishop c6. Okay, so knight f3, bishop c6, bishop d3. And knight d7, castles, knight gf6, rook e1. Black doesn't have a bad French bishop, but black also doesn't have pressure on c5. Okay, there are many ways for black to play here, but I think the most popular is to take on e4 with either with the knight or with the bishop. Most commonly we're going to get a position like this. Knight f6 and rook h4. And the reason I like this is because against 8 rook e1, black doesn't really have a way to avoid this. Black really should trade on e4. And when they, continue with their normal developing moves, we go c4, they castle, and we go queen c2. Now, black can play a number of moves here, but our general idea here is to play the move g4. And you may think that the attack isn't scary, and the engine is going to say, plus 0.5. But when you play g4, this puts tremendous pressure on black. There are only two moves to stay in the game. If h5, g5 is winning, so h5, g5. If knight h7, then rook h5, of course. If knight e8, then once again rook h5, and they resign. If they play h6, this creates a long-term weakness which we can actually exploit straight away. We can just go bishop takes h6, and on knight e4 we can go g5. So, good luck defending this. If you take the bishop, then I go queen e4, and you're about to get mated. So that doesn't work. g6 is the best move. White should still have an advantage, but watch this. So g6, bishop h6, let's say rook e8, and now simply rook d1. A tremendous position for white. Again, the engine says plus 0.5, but who would want to have black here? So this very, very simple idea of playing rook e1 and inviting all the trades. I mean, if black doesn't trade, what do they do? What do they do? I mean, if they go bishop e7, which is a normal move, we take on f6, they take on f6, let's say, with the bishop, and we can go c3. And now we have a very pleasant position where we are going to have a knight on e5. We're going to go a4, undermining the structure. So this is definitely an advantage to white because the c-pawn is immobile. So most people are going to trade. And once they do trade, we play rook h4 and simply continue with g4. So I think this is a very powerful idea, which I have analyzed after losing a game 2 years ago. Okay, and finally, we're going to have a look at the weirdest looking move, the Guimard Defense with knight c6. I have faced this in several online games, and I have played poorly against it. After that, I sat down and, learned the best way to play against it. So we go knight gf3, they go knight f6, we go e5, okay, knight d7, and now here's the crucial point. In my games, I would go c3 or bishop d3 or, bishop b5, but there's a very strong idea here, knight b3. And after knight b3, we are overprotecting d4, and we want to go a4 if they start chasing our knight away. If they don't, if they try to castle, we go h4, h5, h6, and try to mate them with our two bishops and the queen. So let's say they aren't careful. They play bishop e7. We go bishop f4 and they castle. c3, and now let's say, I don't know. Let's say a5. a4, I don't know, rook e8, bishop d3, and attack is mounting. And if you try to play something like b6, I just go h4. The engine says +1.5 after, relatively normal moves for black. So that's our idea. So after knight b3, a5, we go a4. Black needs to delay castling for as long as they can, in my opinion. b6, trying to open up the bishop, h4, bishop a6, takes, rook takes, and h5. Now it's clear that black's never castling kingside. And my question is, where does the black king go? The engine says +1, the best move is h6. Rook a8 is a move, bishop e7 is a move. For example, bishop e7, h6, g6, castles. Seems very scary for black, and the engine agrees. So against the Guimard, we go knight f3, e5, and knight b3. And our idea is to play against them going to the king side. Okay, so these are the lines I wanted to show you. Again, it's all covered in a bit more detail in the repertoire you can find below. This should just be the basis. This should be the beginning of you studying how to play against the French. This is my recommendation. Many people are going to say that there are better lines, but this is something I've had great success with and that I've enjoyed playing. So let me know what you think. Good luck beating the French, and stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.